It's another Tuesday News Day. I'm Adventure Argonaut, and these are the golden news. Before we begin, let's see that the streams are actually working. 2 out of 3 good so far. How about the third one? Seems okay. Let's have a look still. Yes, okay, so my streams are working. So this week we have mostly gaming news, but we have a couple of other news before that. But first of all, the most important bit, I have a can of beer. That hit the spot, as they say. So without further ado, the first news is of course it's not news anymore. It's been talked a lot in the past week, but the Israel blowing up pagers in Lebanon issue, of course. Um, Attacking terrorists with terrorism, that's what it is at best. So, yeah, I'm not gonna go uh, into all the technical details, but just, go through the basic story that supposedly Israel, their intelligence service or Mossad, like it says here in this article as well. So they got hold of some pages used by Lebanese Hezbollah or something, and they put some explosives there, and some small explosives there, and then they gave them to the well, allowed them to be distributed normally, and some of they were all went to members. I mean, Lebanese people. Some of them, I guess, to members of Hezbollah, but many of them, I think, were just went to normal people there, and then they blew up when the Mossad or whatever sent the signal, and says here 12 people were killed, including an 8-year-old girl, and at least 2,800 wounded. And this article is, from a week ago almost, so I don't know if the numbers are higher since then, but anyways, it doesn't really matter, like the details, the small stuff, whether it's 3,000, 4,000 is, in a grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, except, of course, for the people directly affected by the whole thing, then they are. But, like, the as a news story, the numbers are not that relevant. But anyways, so it is an act of terrorism, and of course, I think it's going to be a very effective one. The enemies of Israel now, they are very hesitant to use any kind of communication devices because they don't know how they're going to be used against them. Um, but it is terrorism, and they say they targeted terrorists, but I doubt the 8-year-old girl was a terrorist. And of course, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So uh, except in this occasion, I think it's hard to argue, if you are arguing in good faith that Israel or Mossad weren't terrorists, because they are using fear. Like, it's not just all the people, some of whom might be guilty of something, and many of whom weren't. They're using the fear as a deterrent for, complicating communications in Lebanon and Hezbollah and all that stuff. And but I do, appreciate it in the sense that it's probably a very effective method, and it's just I think the world, everybody should take heed of what they're doing. Like they don't seem to have qualms about crushing their enemy, and that in itself is admirable, even though I don't admire their ultimate goals or whatever. But it's like people just should be aware that like you and me might think like, oh, I wouldn't step over that line, but for some people the line doesn't exist, and I think these people, they are prepared to do even worse and have done even worse to destroy their enemies. And you should be aware of it, whether you support them, you oppose them, or you are ambivalent. Well, let's move on to the next story. uh, so this was the Pager story. Excuse me, the beer is making me burp, even though I wish the burp had been a bit louder. Then there's the P. Diddy stuff. Um, so there are sort of rumors, suggestions going on the internet that P. Diddy or Puff Daddy, whatever his name is, Sean Combs, that he diddled Justin Bieber when he was still a teenager. I remember when Bieber was a big name like 10, 15 years ago, around that time, like 2012, 13, around that time, I think. And of course, I hated him like everybody else. But yeah, if looking back on it, he was a teenager, he was a child, and if he was abused and stuff, like, it is disturbing. Um, so it just goes to show how truly evil these just supposedly just in entertainment industries are, but they are like you just wonder what else is going on there that we don't know about, and what are the ultimate motivations. Like, is it just to make bunch of money to addict people to their entertainment products, or what other political machinations might be behind it all? And yeah, this article I found is like, it doesn't say explicitly that P Diddy did anything to him, and I don't know whether he did, but I did see rumors here and there, so it's possible. But yeah, Justin Bieber breaks down in tears talking about encounters in the music industry. Justin Bieber spoke out about growing up in the spotlight in a disturbing interview in 2020, in which he said he didn't want anyone else to go through what I've been through. And yeah, this is like saying Justin Bieber broke down in tears 4 years ago as he recorded disturbing encounters in the music industry. The 30-year-old is yet to. He's 30 years old. He's both young and old when you think about it, because it's Justin Bieber. You always imagine him as a annoying 13-year-old or whatever. But he's not that old yet. Anyways, so he is yet to speak about his former mentor P. Diddy's arrest and subsequent incarceration following sex trafficking charges against the rapper shot to fame as a teenager. Okay, so he hasn't said anything about it, but people are suggesting, and then this article talks about Billie Eilish, how but Justin Bieber wanted to protect her from the industry, and I do genuinely hope that nothing bad was done to her or anything. But just people should be aware, like, this is just the tip of the iceberg in these entertainment news, whether it's Hollywood or music industry or whatever. Like, all sorts of sick shit goes on. Like, people have been comparing the P Diddy stuff to Epstein, and it's I don't know to what extent is an exaggeration or whether it's even worse in some way. I don't know, but it's like you just wonder like what is the ultimate purpose of this whole machine, this entertainment machine, like beyond catch capturing your imagination and your interest and making you focus on it, giving you the money. Like, of course, there's some propaganda, and you've seen many celebrities pushing the message, whether it's Orange Man bad, or you have to take certain medical procedures into your body, or whatever is the hip thing. That's what they've been doing explicitly for the past 10 years at least. And like I said last week when talking about this PDD stuff, is that um, it is interesting that this is coming to light, that this is being made public. Like, why if there are all sorts of these human trafficking organizations behind the scenes, like they should be worried, like if one of the dominoes falls then others might fall. But of course, with Epstein, he was convicted, or and Ghislaine Maxwell, well, Epstein totally committed suicide, but yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell and him, or Ghislaine, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce her name. uh, Yen. It's like French name. Anyways, so they, well, she was convicted, but the like everybody likes to point out that her clients were not arrested, and her clients did nothing wrong apparently. Like she trafficked people to nobody at all. It's like I'm not wearing anything at all. It's not the exact words, Flanders from Simpsons. Now my son is waking up because of my drunken rambling, and my wife is taking care of the issue, so you don't have to worry. But hey, that's enough of the business of the, I mean, entertainment industry, because it, it's not that there's always something more. Like if there's millions and billions of dollars going on, there's something else behind the scenes, right? So let's, we got the, I don't know. Is this AI generated image, is it like sort of ominous, suggestive, naughty in some way? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. So Nintendo sues Palworld, or Pocket Pair, whatever is. Yeah, Pocket Pair is the company. Um, yes, Pocket Pair, like a pair of socks or whatever, pair of pants. When people talk about it on YouTube and stuff, I also always think it's pear, like the fruit. The fruit that's sort of like an apple, but not an apple. But apparently it's a pear. But it's even the name, like I have to give kudos to Nintendo. I'm certainly not pro Nintendo on this affair, but even the company seems to suggest some sort of Pokemon ripoff. But anyway, so yeah, Nintendo filed a lawsuit last week, 19th. What day is that exactly? So yeah, this was written on Thursday. So yeah, last Thursday. Almost a week ago. So yeah, Nintendo filed a lawsuit, and they are not saying it's copyright infringement. They are saying it's patent infringement, like here. And I'm not a legal expert by any stretch, so I'm not gonna delve deep into that aspect of this story. But like last I heard, the most likely scenario is that they are going to sue Pocket Pair over the use of a ball to catch the monsters, pals, whatever they are. I haven't played Palworld, so I'm not like a pro Palworld person in that sense. However, I am pro letting developers develop, like, freedom of expression, all of that stuff. And as long as Palworld doesn't officially use Pokemon, or have Pikachu there that you clearly looks like a Pikachu or is called Pikachu, I don't think Nintendo should be able to sue them. And some people have compared the game that it actually resembles Ark Survival Evolved more than Pokemon, because you can craft stuff, make guns, shoot the things. Usually in Pokemon games, the ones I've played, you don't shoot the Pokemon. You just send other Pokemon to kick their asses and then capture them. But and of course there have been a bunch of Pokemon ripoffs of various types over the years, like Digimon is the most obvious one. And so, in my opinion, Nintendo is suing Pocket Pair because their game was so popular. Like, people seem to like it more than Pokemon almost. Because the last Pokemon game I played was Pokemon Platinum on the DS, and I didn't finish it. Like, I got tired of it halfway through. I have, at some point wondered whether I should play the newest ones on the Switch, like Arson, something like that. But, limited time, limited money, all of that stuff. I have better stuff to play on my PC, but I do like Nintendo for their products, like their games and stuff. I have a Switch. I even have a Wii and a DS. But I mainly play on PC, as anybody who watches my streams knows. That the 5 people in the world. Um, but um, I don't dislike Nintendo on that avenue, not as as a developer of games and stuff. I don't dislike Nintendo. However, I do dislike their litigious practices. Like, they've been suing people who push game emulation, emulators, ROMs, stuff like that. And, like, smarter people than myself have pointed out the problem with, emulation and piracy stuff is that, you know, if you don't provide a better service than downloading the ROMs from a dodgy website and using an emulator to run them, then there's basically companies for that. If Nintendo doesn't like me playing the original Super Mario on my PC using an emulator, then they should provide better service on the Switch where you can play the original Super Mario. Like, although I assume there is some you can probably buy the original Super Mario on the Switch somehow. I don't have it on my Switch, but whatever, bunch of these old games and stuff, you should be able to play them. And of course, it is good for game preservation that you can download them from the internet and all that stuff. Like, I have zero sympathy for multinational corporations. Like, some people are crying like, oh my god, then if you download these ROMs from the internet and play their game, like, this one guy, or this, like, let's think that there's some game, some obscure game from that was released in 1989, and only, like, there's 5 people in the world who download the ROM and play it in, like, throughout the whole course of this year. And just think of all the losses to Nintendo. It's like, I don't really care. Like, of course, to the extent that if the company goes bankrupt, if nobody buys their games and everybody pirates, sure. Like, I don't want Nintendo to go bankrupt. I don't dislike them that much yet. However, like, if they keep being assholes, because this is clearly, like, in my perception, in my interpretation, the reason for this lawsuit is malicious, like it's to send a message that how dare you beat us at our own game and make more money than we do, and all that stuff. And yeah, I don't have sympathy for multinational corporations, even ones that actually sometimes do something good, like Nintendo sometimes does good things, but um, like what's his name, Arch, former Arch Warhammer, he said that the when you deal with these game companies, you should only give them the stick, like don't really care about the carrot, like when, or like only when they actually do something good you can briefly say like well done, but mostly you just like no, I hate it, don't do this, don't do that. That's how us quote unquote consumers should treat the companies. So yeah, I just it seems very vindictive and legally dubious that they are suing Palworld. Like, of course, the similarities, the inspiration is obvious that it has taken some elements from Pokemon, but it's like, should Final Fantasy sue Nintendo? Of course, the original Final Fantasy was on the Nintendo, but it was by Square. So, should Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or whatever sue Pokemon, because the original Pokemon games were sort of, different take on the formula developed by games such as Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and those games. Like, come on, like that's how games work. You steal ideas, but it's clearly, at least what based on what I've seen, Palworld isn't like a, it's not like a Chinese copy. Like you see this all this Chinese knockoff brands and stuff is nothing like that. And I personally don't have anything against Chinese knockoff brands either, of Nike or whatever you have. But yeah, that's it for the Nintendo story. Let's move on. So Concord cost Sony 400 million bucks. I do like the AI art on this one. Like, I don't know a great deal about the game. That's the first thing. Like, nobody really, like, even before it was released, I did see people on Twitter hating it for obvious reasons. They're far left influenced messaging. Let's call it that, and imagery, images. Let's call it images. I'm getting too drunk. I'm too weak. I haven't drank much alcohol in the past few years. Anyways, I'm not really drunk. I'm just stupid. But anyways, though, yeah, Concord. Let's go through the background story first. So Concord was developed in development for 8 years by Sony, or they were the, I guess, the publisher, and yeah, it was Firewalk or something, the company. I can't be asked to check it now. But anyway, so it was in development for 8 years, and then originally people said it cost 100 million, but just last week or something, some report said that it cost $400 million to develop. And once it was released, it sold so badly and so few people played it that it got cancelled by Sony after 2 weeks, and they refunded everybody who had bought the game. Like, I guess I have to say kudos to Sony, because like this could have made people hate Sony even more. But somehow, like, I guess you could call it a $400 million marketing campaign for Sony, because I'm gonna have a sip first. Because like, at least they didn't steal your money or screw you over, because they admitted it was a piece of shit, and then gave you your money back if you were dumb enough to buy Concord. So yeah, it's funny because, like, if it had been a mediocre game, and they wouldn't have canceled it and refunded it, then lots of people might have bought it, and then it's like, oh come on, this sucks, why did I spend $40 on it or whatever the cost was. um but at least now Sony is spared from that particular bit of ire. They don't suffer from so much negative publicity in that sense. But anyways, so yeah, it was potentially Sony's most expensive game to make, but and of course, it made zero profit in the end if they refunded everybody. Like maybe there were a few people who didn't want the refund, so hey, I guess maybe Sony can keep the money from those games. I'm sure there's gonna be few people, like at least who bought the physical version on PlayStation, and then they are like, oh, I'm gonna keep it. I don't care about getting my money back. Maybe it's three people, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 300. I don't really know. And also, the interesting thing is I don't know much about the gameplay. Like I know it's supposed to be sort of like Overwatch and stuff, but like, is it good? Is it mediocre or is it bad? I assume it's just the gameplay probably was mediocre because I heard so little about it. Because if it was really bad, really buggy on top of it all, I probably would have heard about it. But yeah, just checking something. My stream was working. Okay. So yeah, so I assume the gameplay was mediocre because nobody really talked about it. All I heard about was about the wokeness and the aesthetics that were really bad. And but I just wanna talk about this $400 million. Like they just threw 8 years of work and $400 million down the drain. Like okay, I guess the developers got paid for wasting time and money for Sony. Like, I don't know. Like, will Sony sue some of the people or something? Like, surely somebody has to be responsible for this. And it's just a crazy amount of money because I can promise you, you hire me to be the supervisor or whatever, executive producer on a game like this, with that sort of budget and this sort of time, I will do a better job than Concord. I promise you that. Like, I don't know anything about programming. Well, I lie. I know a little bit. I did some programming in high school in the computer class, so it's not like compared to somebody like my mom, I know a little bit, but I couldn't program a thing without asking search engines or ChatGPT like where to begin. But anyway, but I promise you, I'd do a much better job if Sony hired me for the next $100 million project, because at least I know something about games. I know something what makes games bad or good. So at least if I could choose to hire some people and check whether they can actually make games instead of just their, I don't know, political fantasy sexual fetish stuff, yeah, I definitely do a better job. But it's just insane. Like some time ago, was it year or two ago, so there were people complaining about Elon Musk around the time when he bought Twitter X, whatever. Then it was Twitter, and it'll always be Twitter for me. But anyway, so people were complaining he has so much money and he could end world hunger and stuff, and maybe he could, like, theoretically, if somebody knew how to use the money. Um, but like the left, they like to bitch about certain millionaires and billionaires, the ones that they don't like. Like if they do like it, or if it's a multinational corporation, then they don't complain about it. Just think about this money, like what sort of good you could have done. Like either you give it to, I don't know, 10 or 4, you give it, split the money are amongst 40 decent indie game developers. Some of them would have produced turds that are hardly any better than Concord, but some of them would have been decent games and a few masterpieces probably. Or just give it to Cambodian children starving in Africa, or whatever. Like do something. Like this is insane. Like how we are wasting money in and resources in contemporary society. Like there's normal people here like me who don't who aren't trust fund children, and have to struggle every now and then to pay rent and all that stuff, and then they're just wasting money on nothing at all. Like if you spend this sort of money, you should at least build a Notre Dame or something instead of burning it down. So do something interesting. Like, okay, this is interesting. I must grant them that this whole story of Concord is sort of interesting, which is why I'm talking about it. The doing the autopsy on the body and stuff, but it's just, I think it's emblematic of our contemporary society, how we waste resources, like when we have real problems, or whether you want to go into wars and other issues in starvation in wherever, or people being unemployed or whatever, or just or you could just look at, you could be producing decent games that at least somebody wants to play, like even mediocre games, but nobody can play this game anymore because it's offline. It was live service game. It's another for Accursed Farms, what's his name, Josh, who's trying to make it illegal basically to kill games, stop killing games.com, all that stuff. But yeah, another dead game, because now I'm actually sort of, I'd like to try the Concord just because of this whole fiasco. I don't know. It's waste, but then again, it contributed something. It's a story, and I like stories. Okay, let's move on to the next gaming story. Yeah, story. Um. Oh yeah, yeah. I was looking at this article, but yeah, genuinely, I just, yeah, look, that's 400 million. I forgot. And okay, I can comment on this. Like, yeah, some executives were talking about the game just prior to release, that it was the future of PlayStation with Star Wars like potential and dev culture of toxic positivity. Yeah, like Star Wars, maybe 10 years ago you could have said like, yeah, potential, but look at the state of Star Wars nowadays, and it's not doing so well. Okay, okay, let's move on. Okay, and then the Dragon Age, Dragon Age Veilguard. This Veilguard, like, I've never played any of the Dragon Age games, but the controversy is the character generator, at least the main controversy. So there's this comic somebody made mocking people who are not so enthusiastic about the game. So the guy is complaining, this character creator features top surgery scars. Crash. Woke police come into the apartment. Apply them. No, apply them. So they're forcing the guy to apply the surgery scars. And of course, they are mocking the idea like, well, it's optional. You don't have to apply surgery scars. I mean, top surgery scars. If you don't understand what it means like, transgender stuff, that, women who want to act like become men, or something, they have their boobs cut off, and they have scars where their boobs used to be. So this is something that they want to mock, or this is the crux of the controversy. Like, there's other stuff like vitiligo. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Some skin disease that patches of your skin look uh, different. Like let's say you have a black person with patches of white skin in some parts of their hand or face or whatever, and that's like, well, that's basically like, yeah, I don't mind at all if the game has that option, but I've seen it here and there in like woke entertainment in recent times. So it's more like a fetish, like that vitiligo stuff. So in that sense, it's disturbing. Like it's so fringe thing that why do you have to have it represented? Like I don't know, why can't you have a tattoo of a Finnish flag there then? And okay, and so but this I truly do oppose, this top surgery scar thing, and that's because, like, for one, the developers are wasting their time on doing something as meaningless as this. Like, instead of working to make the game good, story, gameplay, all that stuff, they are wasting times. Like, okay, I don't think that programming this and making the visuals, the graphics of top surgery scars probably wasn't the greatest of endeavors, like most demanding or time consuming tasks, sure, but still, it is still a waste of their resources. And secondarily, it also sort of highlights the priorities of the developers. Like, it doesn't, because I haven't played any other Dragon Age games. Like, I have considered on a few occasions to try the first one, but I haven't gotten around to it. Maybe one day. But certainly not eager to try this one. But yeah, it's clear that they care more about this woke stuff, and we've seen it so many times already over the past decade. So nobody who really likes games wants to see this in their games. And also, like, I could be wrong, since, like I said, I haven't played the games, but it's some fantasy world. I think dark. I've heard people describe it as dark fantasy, and games like worlds like that don't have transgender surgery. Like, it's like, I know that Dragon Age, was it your first one or the second one, that you could have gay sex with your companion, and I do remember seeing the clip on YouTube back in the day, and it was really cringe already back then. Not because they had gay sex, but the way it was handled was really like, I don't know, people who have zero experience with dating and stuff, who had written the scripts. But anyways, like, this has no place in a world inspired by medieval Europe. Like, there's somebody commenting, top surgery didn't exist in medieval times. Okay, neither did 90% of the shit that goes on in Dragon Age. They made their own world and decided its laws. That's kind of how world building and writing works. Okay, I you should go back to the first Dragon Age. Was there top surgery? If there was, then this person is correct. Otherwise, they should shut the fuck up. They don't know what they're talking about. They just want their political bullshit. Their rather their religious domination to take over the shit. And of course, this is the director of Dragon Age Veilguard, Corinne Bush. Here it says, as queer trans woman, I have a perspective on the games that not everyone has. Dragon Age has long been a place where LGBTQ blah 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 folks can see themselves represented respectfully. It's inherently very queer and such a rare thing for marginalized communities to have representation where we feel proud and powerful, where we are depicted. A younger version of myself to see some game. Yeah. it's like, okay, so representation, everybody included. You always hear this, inclusiveness. So okay, let's say like you want to have um, let's say how about having a character generator that you can have a swastika tattoo on your face, or like white power tattoo or something like that. Why is not that included there as representation? Or why isn't like, hey, I'm from Finland, I live in Hong Kong, but I'm Finnish, so why can't I have, like, I don't know, Finnish flag? Why is not that represented in Dragon Age, huh? Like, this is absolute bullshit. Like, because you're not. The main issue is that these people are complete parasites with zero imagination. They cannot fathom of a fantasy world. Like, you are the reason why people like me play games like, fantasy RPGs is because you want the fantasy experience. You want to go to the, dungeons to fight against monsters, evade traps, get loot, or, like, engage in the politics of that fantasy world instead of the politics of the real world. Because this top surgery stuff is stuff you hear in the real world. That's not something you ever heard in any fantasy world 10, 20 years, or well, 10 years ago. Yeah, that's when it started to become a thing. But, like, 20 years ago, nobody had this issue. Like, yeah, sure, there was probably one or two freaks who wanted it. But it's like, that's not the essence of fantasy. That's not why people play fantasy games, because they don't want to worry about, paying the rent and going to the fucking bureaucracy office to fill out our forms and stuff, or, like, this crap. Like, they want to play a game about the evil necromancer who wants to, infect the whole world with his necromantic ooze, or and make everybody into zombies, and then you have to fight against it. That's why you play against, why you play fantasy, or, the orcish armies are amassing, and the Dark Lord is controlling them, and you have to defeat them, and shit like that. That's why people play fantasy role playing games. It's not to have fucking top surgery scars. Like, these people are they are parasitical entities that should not be categorized as human beings. It's disgusting. Like, I don't even care about Dragon Age, because my best memories about the stuff is that, okay, there was Kate Mulgrew, who played Captain Janeway in Star Trek Voyager, and I didn't hate her like many others back then. Uh, but and then there's the gay sex you can have with your elven companion or something, and that was just cringe. But yeah, let's get to the last story. So, is Crusader Kings gay marriage? Well, this is not a new story. This is from a couple of years ago, but it's related to this stuff with Dragon Age, which is why I want to talk about it. So yeah, Crusader Kings 3 is about to officially support same-sex marriages. So so yeah, basically they introduced a function to Crusader Kings 3 that the 2 years ago, that the well, it's 2.5 years now, I guess. But anyways, that you can have an optionally have gay marriage in the game. Like, of course, normally, because it's set in the Middle Ages, it's not a thing. But if you want to have fun, then you can enable it. So, gay marriage can be accepted in the game. And for the record, I have played hundreds of hours of Crusader Kings 2 and 200 hours of Crusader Kings 3, so I do have some idea what I'm talking about. Although I didn't, because I didn't really pay attention to this same sex marriage. Like, I first played Crusader Kings 3 last summer, about a year ago, and didn't really pay attention whether it had this stuff or not. And let's say, 15 years ago, if somebody would have implemented this stuff to a Crusader Kings game or any similar kind of game, I would have said, well, cool, I guess. But now in the current climate, I do think something like this is a bad thing, even though it's optional. It's turned off by default. I understand because when I played the game, I didn't get any gay marriages because it's set in the Middle Ages, and so that's like, why add this stuff there? Because it clearly has nothing to do with the historical accuracy of the game, and also I think they said that because the Crusader Kings 2, it had some, events that could happen that, like, a portal to hell could open in your realm and then you have to plug it or something, or they you could basically have some sort of um, Maid of Orleans, what's her name? Jeanne d'Arc kind of event that one of you, some character, either your character or somebody in the realm, is gets a message from God, and you can become like the avatar for God or for Satan. Like you can, there was all sorts of stuff like that. Like they were sort of fringe, didn't happen often. But I think for Crusader Kings 3, they said they don't want any of that because it's not historical. So why the fuck do they add this stuff? And also in this current climate, it's very understandable because the industry, even though most people, whether you are just a normie or a bit more to the right, as they say, they're not fans of this sort of stuff. So it is a waste of resources and also shows wrong priorities from the developers, especially, Crusader Kings 3. And I do love the games. Like, I have my qualms about them, but like the basic idea is great. But I guess I'd like to see a bit more like role playing elements to be more better, because at some point that the games devolve into just painting the map in your own color, conquering land, because there's not much else you can do, and unless something wacky happens, but that's another issue. So because yeah, Paradox Games, the publisher of this game, developer, both I believe, yeah, it's also developer Paradox. So they are notorious for their grand strategy games, that they first release them and they are buggy as hell and they suck during the first year or two, but over the course of time they will make DLC and bug fixes and stuff, and then they start to become good. And of course, the DLC are notorious that they are overpriced and usually break the game in one way or more ways when they are first come out, and then they have to patch them. And of course, that the DLC is usually overpriced. Like there's few actual functions that the piece of DLC adds to the game, and maybe one of them or one or two of them are something you really want, but the other stuff is sort of like maybe if it's better without it, or I don't really care either way. But it's like, should I buy it? Should I not buy it? It's not the best way of doing, but like nobody else, or hardly anybody else is doing the same kind of game, so they have captured this niche audience, and I'm partially part of it because I love Crusader Kings 1 and 2 and 3. Never played the original, but so yeah, it's instead of making DLC and stuff that actually worth the price tag, they do shit like this, which is just clearly this virtue signaling bullshit. But hey, maybe the ship is trying to right itself as we speak, since Concord's failure and all that stuff. But it's still, let's say 2 years from now, wokeness just for the sake of the argument, let's say 2 years from now, if wokeness is just a thing of the past, something we laugh about, occasionally cringe about, like, oh yeah, that time was so lame and stuff, but it's like, why did we have to go there? Why did we have to suffer through all this, this decade of bullshit in various, this, of propaganda in various avenues of entertainment? Like, why did we have to go through it? And, to look into it, you really have to go back to these two issues. Like, they are more related that one might think initially. But it's not like, I wasn't planning to make this connection, and I can't put the threads all together. This is just, I'm spitballing because I run out. This was the last story. I do like this AI art, and I why is this guy, the guy in black, sort of dressed like a horse or something? It's like a helmet that looks like a horse or something. I didn't tell it to do that. I just told it to do a gay medieval wedding or something. But I do like the AI art sometimes. It's quite cool. But yeah, this, partially the reason why our, entertainment was infected by all of this political bullshit, and it still is due to, bigger political factors, because some people have called it like a humiliation ritual, by the kind of people who are in charge. And I'm not sure if that's the motivation, but it's there are, like, subversive political motivations beyond this wokeness. It's not simply, deluded people who somehow magically infected most of academia, and through that managed to infect most of entertainment. Like, there's more nefarious machinations at hand. So, even though they might be pulling back on the wokeness aspect, but, we shouldn't forget that these people are still more or less pulling the strings. So these, BlackRock and organizations like that. Like, let's say BlackRock itself goes bankrupt, next month or something, just hypothetically speaking, doesn't mean that another, head won't grow for the Hydra to take over. Like, they might, the, that aspect of the Hydra might be dressed differently, but the ultimate motivations and goals of that Hydra won't change. But I guess that's the end of my ramblings today. So I'm Adventure Argonaut, and this has been the Golden News on a Tuesday News Day, and I thank you for watching. So I'm gonna go finish my beer now. Bye bye.